Katia, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I know we're big time difference between us, so morning for you, afternoon for me. So appreciate you taking the time and joining me today to have this discussion. I know we're going to talk about quite a few things, especially around integrating what we hear about Eastern philosophies and how that tends to now is being, I would say, more integrated into Western psychology, but more in a mainstream way. I don't know if people fully appreciate some of the teachings from that part of the world, but I'm sure we'll explore that as well. But before we do, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with us a little bit about your story, because you obviously had to go through your own journey to come to some of the understandings you have now and that you're sharing with the world. So, yeah, over to you and share as much as you want.
And hi, Furkan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to share with your listeners. Yes, indeed. It is morning over here in New Zealand, and it has been a journey, my life for sure. And it started with great pain and sadness and loneliness. I remember I came from a household that was very well meaning, but I had a military dad and school teacher mom, and it was very demanding and very
Mm,
strict and abusive in some ways, physically including.
mm,
And I remember I was so scared. I was really scared of. I remember breaking an egg and being terrified, not knowing if I was going to get beaten.
mm,
And I used to look at people in the eyes and beg them, please see me, please see what's happening in my home, please save me.
mm,
And no one would. Even I told some of my teachers, but my parents managed to make it sound like that it was all good. So no one,
mm,
as much as I even tried to reach out. Some children don't, but yeah, it didn't work. And
mm,
I just remember that feeling of please help me, and no one would. So I started to become really angry at some point in my teenage years. I became really angry. I started drinking alcohol, and I was really, really desperate. I just didn't see any meaning in life, and I didn't appreciate life at all.
mm,
And things just started getting worse and worse. I think because that was not my path. Like I needed to shift my life radically.
mm,
And but I didn't know how to do that. There was no guidance at the time. I was living in Portugal. There was no guidance, and I thought my one thought was maybe if I have my own family one day, this I can change this. I can create a loving home that's
yes.
connected and values freedom and joy and love, and I held on to that for
Mhm,
many years. And when that time finally came in my late 20s, I was just so ecstatic. Like I finally got pregnant, that my dream was coming true, and
mhm,
finally things were beginning to shift. And I lost that pregnancy. I had a
mm,
miscarriage, and that just destroyed everything. It just destroyed my lifelong dream. It destroyed my only hope for this life. And it was devastating. I felt like my whole world crumbled. And that was the time that yoga found me,
mm,
and these Eastern traditions, the spiritualities and that wisdom that comes from many traditions, actually, not just yoga. And when I say yoga, I'm not talking about the just doing postures as we know yoga in the West,
yes.
but I'm talking about the deep wisdom about life and the universe and
Mm,
ourselves. And I started to learn about this deep wisdom. It was obviously it was perfect timing because all my world had crumbled. I had lots of room for new wisdom, new philosophies, anything that would help me rebuild. And it was through yoga that I've rebuilt life. And finally, when I understood the depth that life can have,
mm,
that's when I realized what was missing all along.
mm,
And then I started obviously studying yoga for many years. Then I started teaching yoga. My life had changed completely in ways that when you say, oh, life's going to change, you think it might change 30%. But it, there's ways in which my life changed that it was 1,000%, like the ways that I couldn't even predicted that were possible. And so I
Mhm.
started teaching that, and then I started seeing the same was happening to my students.
Mm.
They were experiencing complete life shifts. And that's when I knew, okay, I need to really make this my life
Mm.
focus. And it's not just yoga. I love all esoteric traditions, all indigenous traditions. They have so much wisdom to share. And I love to dabble in every little thing that I can find. And yeah, through all that wisdom, I decided to shift my career
Mhm.
because I was in IT before. I was a programmer. Now I'm a psychotherapist, and it just feels much more aligned. I'm a holistic coach. Like I teach the things that changed my life. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's been my life journey.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. I am There's a lot of questions coming up for me, so I'll try to bring them up one at a time. So I know you talked
Yes.
about your teenage years being where you were really angry, and one of the outlets you found was alcohol. And you had also mentioned that you were struggling to find meaning in life. How were you able to come out of that? And I wonder if part of it was that shift where you were like, "Oh, if I have my own family, then things will be different." Was that something that gave you meaning? And then we'll obviously talk about the tragedy around the miscarriage for sure and how that impacted you. But leading up to that, to me, I would assume that's where you found meaning and were able to shift your perspective a little bit.
Yes, I think I just kept on drinking until I
Mm.
could find some meaning, honestly. And I've done something that now I see is very problematic, which is I've put all my eggs in one basket. I've put all my hopes into this one thing. And
Mhm.
obviously, that's a terrible idea if that one thing fails as it did. But in the
Mhm.
end, like it worked out precisely
Right.
because everything failed. But yeah,
Yes.
it's not something I'd recommend for sure.
For sure, yeah. And is there coincidence? I know for myself too, moving away from family of origin sometimes happens on a subconscious level, or maybe there's a deeper pull from a higher power. But in your case, to be so far away, was that subconscious or conscious, like to create some separation? Like, what was the reason behind that?
It was conscious, and what was happening was when yoga created that shift in me, I started. So, when this is an esoteric teaching as well, which is when we change something internally, our environment externally starts to change as well.
Mm.
So, I started to do yoga and all the, not just again the postures, but all the
Right.
philosophies and the elements of yoga, which I can talk a bit about. But
Yes.
once I started doing that, I started shifting my vibration,
Mm.
we all vibrate at a particular frequency. And obviously, alcohol, anger, fear are very low frequencies. And they tend to be frequencies related to anxiety, stress, and like dysregulation.
Yeah.
And if you increase your frequency through a better lifestyle,
Mhm.
more inspiring living, etc., then you start to resonate with higher frequencies and more states of love and bliss and joy and altruism, less selfishness, etc. So once I started to shift that vibration, then I realized that the environment around me in Portugal wasn't mirroring me anymore.
Mm.
Like that sadness that I felt, that depression, I didn't feel it anymore inside me. So it felt like a mismatch between myself and the environment. I thought, let me change things because I don't feel good here anymore. Not that I ever felt good, but
Right.
at that point, I felt more empowered
Mhm.
to shift. And yeah, my external environments just adapted to that. I just naturally moved to New Zealand, and New Zealand's always felt very positive and kind. Yeah, and very different vibration. Not
Yeah.
that Portugal has a bad vibration. I'm not trying to say that. It
Yeah,
was
just
just
for
how I was
yourself, it
living.
was
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, that makes sense for sure. And then I know you talked about turning towards yoga and some of the other philosophies and traditions. How were you able to make meaning? Because at the end of the day, I think what we're touching on here is irrespective of life situations, as difficult as they can be, and sometimes we need the time to process the pain and the grief and the sadness, everything that comes with some those experiences. But then what I've been able to find for myself at least is when I'm able to see that there is a purpose behind the pain and the loss, and there is something to be found in terms of meaning making. It's been able to, not that it gets any easier, but at least it gives one a sense of direction and I would say, at least from my experience, even faith in myself and a higher power that, okay, things are happening for me as much as they may not see it. Just curious about your experience and how were you able to put it all together and obviously come out of it and now be in a place where you're also serving others through their pain.
That's definitely been my experience, that things are happening for the greater good, my own and everyone else's. And
Mhm.
in how I see it, which obviously is oriented by those yoga philosophies, is that we have a soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, something deeper within us. And that there's a journey. There's a
Mhm.
journey that soul is going through from kind of unconsciousness to consciousness. The soul wants to awaken, it wants us to reach our full potential. It goes through many lifetimes. This is not probably not our first lifetime here
Mhm.
on this earth. And in each lifetime, it aims to awaken more and raise vibration, become more conscious.
Mm.
Through that process, to awaken certain parts of us, suffering is needed. Buddhists say we can learn through dharma or through karma, meaning we can listen to a beautiful teaching and really think, oh, yes, I understand that now, and integrate
Mhm.
that in our lives. Or we can learn through pain, through going through the opposite. We did something harmful to another person and we get something harmful
Right.
ourselves. And then we learn, okay, I shouldn't have done that. Our soul almost pulls those experiences towards us, those painful experiences or not, both dharma and karma experiences, so that we can learn and awaken that potential that we have inside. So that's why difficult things happen. They are needed. And I look back at my life and I see, gosh, if I hadn't lost that child inside of me, my life would just be like I would be a frustrated programmer. Nothing, I wouldn't have woken up to all these aspects of life that I since have.
Mm.
So, and even the abuse. Now I support people because I've gone through different types of
Mhm.
abuse, and now I support people here in New Zealand. We actually offer psychotherapy to survivors of sexual abuse.
Mm.
So I get to offer therapy for free to those
Mhm.
people who
Mhm.
have done that and support them. So I can see how every single experience in my life, good or bad, has contributed towards me being who I am. And I guess what was difficult when I was growing up is that every painful thing that happened seemed meaningless. It's
Mm.
like now I look back and I can see they were all pieces of a puzzle that now come together and I can see the puzzle. And but when I was living those things, I had no sense of spirituality, no understanding of the big
Mhm.
picture. So they just seemed like pointless pieces that made no sense.
Right.
And so, at least if I had the knowledge at the time that everything's happening for a reason, it could have
Mhm.
helped me. Like that spiritual framework could have supported me, but because that wasn't there, that's why it was so devastating.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of that is just part of our journey, right? And I think we go through it and arrive at different times and go through different experiences, but that's part of it, right? I look back at some of the things I was just even earlier in life, and it's, yeah, I wish I had made sense of these things or made different choices, but I wouldn't be where I am today, as you alluded to as well. Now, you've talked about yoga and you've been very cautious around talking about it's not just poses, right? And I think most people just practice yoga and experience the poses, but what I'm hearing from you is there's a deeper philosophy behind it, and even each pose has specific meaning to it. Are you able to talk about what you mean when you say yoga is beyond the poses?
Yeah, absolutely. This is in the context of our awakening, our soul journey, and reaching that full potential.
Mm.
So everything is connected, like physical, energetic, emotional, mental, spiritual. And something that connects everything, all those energies, are the chakras. These are the centers of energy of our system. And there's all these frequencies in the universe of love, compassion, joy, like all those things. And sometimes we can't seem to access them. And there's a yoga teaching that says that everything that exists externally, everything in the world also exists internally. It's totally accessible to us. And why it's accessible is because of our chakras. So the chakras are like, imagine our radio that allows us to tune into those frequencies. Similar to a radio, we can't just hear every radio frequency that's in the air, but if you just tune the radio to that frequency, you can hear it. So that's us in the chakras. They allow us to tune into those beautiful energies. So to give you an example, let's say the first chakra, we call it the first chakra, not that there's an order, but in English we call it the root chakra. In Sanskrit, which is Indian sacred language, it's called Muladhara. So this chakra is about, it's related to the element of the earth, and it's related to grounding, stability, security. It's related to vitality. People who have this chakra active and balanced, they're very stable people. They'll take their time choosing something if they really want that thing in their lives, but once they choose it, they will see it through to the end. They're connected to nature, to the environment around them, and they feel safe and secure in that, and they feel like a part of it. They feel connected, and they're patient people and vital. However, if this chakra is not balanced, then we feel fear. We're in a state of anxiety, of worry, of fatigue. The element of earth can create a lot of rigidity, like in the system, like that we have to have things a certain way, and a lack of grounding, lack of stability and connection to the environment around us. So that's the kind of psychological piece around how that feels. It's connected to our kidneys, to the prostate, to the large intestine, to the immune system. That's physically, it connects to those parts. And how we would work with postures, and in yoga, to bring it back to yoga, we would do postures that elongate and compress the sacrum. So that's where the first chakra is, in the perineum area, like between the anus and the genitals. So if we compress or elongate that area, then we start activating and balancing Muladhara chakra. So this is one chakra. Like, we have thousands of chakras, but mainly we group them into 7 chakras, 7 main energies. And I don't want to maybe bore the listeners with too much detail, but I've written a whole book about this. Echoes of the Timeless is about a journey of awakening through those chakras. So I can't possibly do that in a few minutes in a podcast, but this is just a nugget to show like how everything is connected, and each chakra is related to specific emotions, like rebels of consciousness. And if it's balanced, then we feel like the balanced side of those emotions, and our organs are working well. So for me, like, I remember I was saying that I lived in fear a lot. So I had problems in my immune system. So as I said, first chakra. And for many years, I had a horrific chronic autoimmune disease that doctors told me, like, you just can't treat that. It's not possible, blah, blah, blah. And then when I found yoga and I found psychotherapy, I thought to myself, don't tell me what I can't treat. So then I went and looked at the psychosomatic, so the psychological aspects behind why that was manifesting in my body. And I healed those patterns that were behind that. And then the disease just went away. Something that I could have had my whole life. So yeah, and for each chakra, there'll be different parts of the body that relate to it. So this is where it's so empowering, because you look at, okay, I have this mental pattern or this physical ailment. This is related to the third chakra, or related to willpower and determination and healthy self-esteem and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to do these postures, and it's going to heal that. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate you giving a bit of an example too and walking us through it. Now, when it comes to autoimmune, I'm just curious, because a lot of the times the nervous system comes into play as well. So how do you tie, because nowadays people are talking about, at least in the psychological field, you talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. How do you focus on the rest and digest side of it and calm it down? So how do you tie that into kind of the yogic type of tradition and some of the principles you're talking about?
It's a great question because science is constantly trying to keep up, I think, with the spiritual wisdom. And so there's the sympathetic part of the nervous system, which is related to contraction
Mhm,
and tension, and the parasympathetic, which relates to relaxation and ease.
mhm.
And let's just say that in the Western world, everyone is this in the sympathetic. Like everyone is, or most people are
Yes.
tense. A lot of people are stressed, anxious. So let's just say pretty much almost everybody is in the sympathetic nervous system. Yoga has a lot of tools for that. We have the
Mhm.
relaxation, the yoga relaxation. We have lots of breathing exercises. We call
Yes.
pranayama. We have even meditation helps relax the system. And there's yoga nidra, which is a particular type of deep relaxation. So just assume that everyone's more tense than they should be. And that creates all sorts of blockages in the body and in the mind. It clogs our chakras, all that stimulation, all that movement. And gosh, there is stimulation these days with social media, with the
Yes.
news, so much fear going on. We just need the opposite of that, really. And so anytime we can go away to a retreat for a weekend, or just detox from social media, or do something that's do the yoga relaxation every night or every
Mhm,
morning. Those are just really important tools for us to balance our system. And balance is key because without balance, then we're dysregulated, even if we don't really know it.
mhm. No, that's fair, that's fair. And then you've talked about some of the other traditions you are interested in, and you also look you've learned about. So how do you implement some of those, and where are the commonalities? And perhaps, again, to your point earlier, we don't have a lot of time to dive into everything, but how do you find commonalities in some of the traditions you've talked about, the esoteric side of things, the shamanic practices, and the indigenous wisdom you were alluding to earlier? Yeah, how does that all of that come together for you?
The way that it comes together for me is I've learned to see the world through the lens of the chakras, and then I integrate every piece of information in that framework.
Mm,
So let's give another example. So I live in New Zealand. It's a bicultural country. It's English and it's Maori. These are the indigenous people of New Zealand.
mhm,
And Maori have many beautiful teachings. Some are about land, for example, our connection of how we connect to nature is often quite unhealthy in the West. We feel like we own nature. We can do whatever we like with it. We're not really grateful for it.
mhm,
Usually, we just take it for granted, and we often go to a place and just destroy everything. It's so that we can build what we want there. And what I mean by this is, I went to where did we go? Peru a few
mhm.
years ago, and looked at the temples there that were built hundreds, thousands of years ago.
Yes.
And the temples are glorious because they are built in nature in such a way that nature is the guiding principle. So a mountain
Mm,
has a particular shape, and they built a temple within the shape of that mountain. And it just looks glorious. And I was so
mhm.
surprised. Like it looks powerful. It feels powerful to be there. And I
Yes.
think in the West, when we want to build something, we want to build a church or whatever. So we take down whatever is in that land, we flatten it, and then we
Mhm.
build what we want on top of it. We're not working
Right.
with it. We're working despite it
Mhm.
in a way.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have so little appreciation for it. We literally could not live if nature was not here. Like we would have no food to eat, no water to drink, no air to breathe. Like we literally exist because nature exists. And in Maori culture, there's just a lot of, in many, if not all indigenous cultures, there's so much appreciation for that. And reciprocity is a key value.
Mhm.
Yeah, so all of this relates to the first chakra. Then I put it back in. There's also a lot of in Māori tradition teachings about community and how we are in exchange with our community around us. So we contribute so that it contributes to us as well. We don't just live in a place. We are in connection with those people. We are there for them, and they are there for us.
Mm.
It's just such a concept that we've lost with the whole nuclear family situation.
Yes.
So for me, I relate that to both the second chakra, which is around social connection and creativity and also enjoyment. It's also related to sexuality. But yeah, so connection with those around us, and also the heart chakra, which is relating to love and altruism and
Mhm.
giving and compassion. We can put those things in practice because we have a community around us that we're connected to and that we can help
Mhm.
and that can help us. Yeah. So whereas if these chakras are unbalanced, we will feel like with the second chakra, we would feel frustration, social anxiety, shame, poor social skills. There's a kind of a way of relating that is possessive or jealous. There's a lot of addictions. Yeah, and problems with sexuality. And with the heart chakra, we would be more selfish.
Mm.
We'd feel more sadness and grief and loneliness and hopelessness. Yeah, so this would all get in the way of us actually being able to connect in a healthy way with those around us.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. And what about, so I know you touched on the indigenous piece, especially in terms of in their tradition, the connection to earth and land and all of that. How do you then, and I think the shamanic practices often reflect that too, but in a somewhat a different way, but are you able to talk through that? And then perhaps even the esoteric side of things, which you are touching on, but a bit in terms of granularity, if you can, as much you can offer in that space.
Yeah, for sure. I feel that it's very wholesome the way that Maori would think about life or connect with life. So we talked about a few levels of that, but there's more levels which also
Mhm.
connect to more shamanic practices. So another thing that's really important for Maori is ancestry. We, what did I hear the other day? What we're doing now and how we relate now is the consequence of the last 500 years of
Mm.
how our family was interacting. So our grandparents and all of
Mhm.
that, how they all treated each other is what led to us being exactly who we are today. All
Mm.
those patterns were passed on. So we are very much a consequence of those that have come before us,
Mm.
for good or for bad.
So Western
And
psychology would call that generational trauma.
yes, on the bad side, yes, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this is also how it connects to psychology.
Mhm.
But also the Maori usually would see older people as someone who brings wisdom. The
Yeah.
older generations are actually valued for all the wisdom and knowledge that they
Yes.
bring. So that's very different from Western as well. But even they connect with the ancestors that are alive and dead, like the spirits are very present in what this tradition caters for the visible and the invisible.
Mm.
And those things are so present with us. And shamanism is very much on the same wavelength. We this is how it relates to the chakras as well. Those chakras, the higher chakras that allow us to
Mhm.
see more of the invisible worlds, they're pretty much inactive for
Mm.
most people. If there's spirits around us or energies around us, most people wouldn't be able to pick that up.
Mm.
And that's not even in yoga, that's not in shamanism, that's not even considered like a supernatural power. That's just part of life. Like you are aware of the energies around you as you're aware of the environment around you. That's a normal thing. And how can you live your lives if you're not aware of those things? It's like being blind to a whole dimension of life, right? So it's really important to understand those invisible worlds to see what we're dealing with and why we're being affected in a certain way. So many people are being affected in negative ways simply because there's an energy attached to them
Mm.
or a spirit or whatever. And they go on for years sometimes, and
Mm.
they simply don't realize that's the problem. Often people think that they are the problem. If they are
Mm.
depressed, and this is Western society really
Mhm.
stimulates this. If you're depressed, you're anxious, etc., it's all on you. Like, you're the
Mm,
problem.
mm,
You take medication or whatever because you're the
right.
problem. But often the problem is in the whole context. Are
Mm,
you in a toxic environment? Do you have something negative attached to you? Do
mm,
you Obviously some things are inside us. So we have negative belief systems and all the things, but looking at it holistically, like with shamanism, I was talking about Peru earlier,
yes.
and some of these adventures are in my book as well. I was there in a shamanic retreat in the forest, like in
Yep.
the forest near Iquitos, the Amazon
Yep.
forest, and we went through these to some medicine journeys,
Yes.
which are some of them are psychedelic journeys.
Mhm.
And in those journeys, it's like something happens in our system with those plants, considered sacred plants, obviously, in their
Mhm.
tradition, that they enable us to see the sacredness of everything, the interconnectedness of everything. And often when we're in a, let's say, normal state of consciousness, we can't feel the interconnectedness of everything. Everything seems separate, and we
Mhm.
are a separate individual, and nothing's connected. Or maybe you feel connected to two or three people or a cat,
Mhm.
but really we miss that interconnectedness and the sacredness of everything. And through that work with those medicines, I think it's a pretty direct way to feel how there's just so many more layers to life, and
Yep.
how beautiful it all is, and how connected it all is, and how much grace is behind everything, and that ultimately there is no good and bad in a way. There is just
Mhm.
existence manifesting itself
Mm.
ultimately for the higher good, even those really difficult things that are
Yes.
happening. Yeah, shamanic medicines and also practices with nature teaches us a
Yes.
lot if we just have the time to spend there.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that
And when
answers
you
your question.
talk Yeah, yeah, for sure, and when you talk about having that negativity attached to yourself, and you were making the point that sometimes the focus is on the individual, but there could be other stuff there. How do you become aware of it, and then what do you do about it if that is truly the case?
I would say, from my yoga perspective, the fifth chakra is related to the element of ether and our ability to see those or perceive the energy behind everything.
Mm,
And then we've got the third eye, the sixth chakra, which is related to seeing the invisible things. So the activation of the higher chakras enables us to just naturally become aware of those types of things. But also just knowing that is possible can open
mhm,
up some doors, because often we just don't know what's possible. And
mhm,
therefore we have muscles, quote unquote, that we've just never exercised, like our intuition and that ability to see the unseen. We've just
mhm.
never been taught to exercise those muscles. And therefore, the like any other muscle that we haven't exercised, like, it's just not working. So when we begin to tune into that, we start just gently to be able to perceive more and more.
Yeah, for sure, and then once you have the awareness, then you can work through it. Like, I'm not sure, like, personally, if I were to look at it, how do I then remove this energy? I know you talked about sometimes you have to change your
Interesting.
environment
Oh,
or
no, good.
ha yeah, yeah, but yeah, what do
Yeah,
you end up
sometimes we
doing?
can't really sometimes we can't really change our environment, like it's our
Yes,
home or something.
right,
So that yeah, it's a bit trickier. But yeah, so with spirits and energies, shall I just give you an example? Maybe it'll
yeah,
be easier to,
sure,
yeah. So there was this woman that I was hosting a retreat here on the island where I live, and this woman comes. I knew her from the past, and she looks depleted. She looks just sad and lifeless, and she just comes to that retreat. I'm like, whoa, what's happening here?
mhm,
And so we're just doing retreat stuff, and then I kind of tune into her and I see, okay, she's got a spirit attached to her, like a really negative entity attached to her. And then I'm in that position where I've been many times in my life. Should I say anything? Is it my place to say anything? I'm sure they would maybe appreciate if I said something, or would they just freak out? Or so all these things happening in my mind. And then I decide, no, she's a friend-ish, like we've known each other a while. We'll just tell her. And so I ask her, look, I believe that you have this energy connected to you, and would you like me to try and remove it? And she's, yes, I would very much like that. And I'm like, okay. And so in that case, I tune into the energy. I would do this in any case. And I try to talk to it. And in most cases, the entities, they don't understand that they're causing harm. They just feed on life force, and that's why they hang around. But they don't really necessarily understand that they're causing or sometimes they don't know where to go as well. So they just hang around and take energy from us. So my first step is I communicate with them, like in my mind, like psychically, and I explain to them, look, like this person is really depleted. You can't continue to do this, and look at her, like this is not a normal state. And could you please leave? And then it says, but okay, I understand. I also don't want to harm this person, but where should I go? And then I tell that entity, like, okay, I will search for a place for you. And then I search for a place I tune into their energy, and I search for a place in the universe that has a similar energy where they wouldn't have to harm anyone. And when I find a similar energy, then I tell them. And in that place, I remember it was like a place where it was very beautiful. It had nature as well. So I don't know exactly where that was, but I could tell that it was an energy that was resonant with that entity. And it happily went. So this happened. And when I finished this conversation with this entity, the woman, she just looks at me and she starts laughing. And she laughs and laughs. And I'm like, whoa, what is happening? And she says, I have not felt joy in 9 months. I have not felt any aliveness in me in 9 months. When I went to a particular house, so I guess the problem was she got this entity when she moved into a particular house. And since that moment, I've just felt flat and nothing would really cheer me up. And now I feel so happy. I just want to laugh. Yeah, that's how instant it was.
No, and what happens if the entity, as you're expressing it, isn't willing to cooperate?
Yeah, so that then becomes a bit more tricky.
Yes.
So sometimes I'll get a bit more stern, make sure that I tell it it's really not okay to stay there, and that it's just not going to be possible. Sometimes they go, sometimes they don't. If they don't, then I will try to energetically push them into their place, and usually that works. Sometimes that doesn't work. If that doesn't work, then I've got tools, shamanic tools, like the shaker, I've got crystals, I've got incense, and I've got some other sacred tools that help me achieve particular goals, and I will use my tools to achieve those goals. So in the vast majority of, I'm not an expert in these things. It's just I've always had this ability in a way, and because I see things, I then feel like I need to do something about it. And so yeah, it's really not my profession or anything. It's just that I've just reacted to situations that were happening and tried to help, and in that sense, became a bit more knowledgeable in the situations.
So yeah, that was going to be my question. Is that something that people are typically, they have this gift or they have to train, or is it a bit of both?
A bit of both. Everyone has this gift. It's just that it's asleep. It's one of those things, like most of our abilities are, other than just living life as we know it in the West, are asleep. And we need to awaken those other parts. We don't need to, we can do whatever we like. But if we want to have those abilities, we need to awaken the higher chakras, the intuition and our inner vision and all those things. Yeah, and that takes practice and it takes intention. Yeah, usually.
Mhm.
Some people are just born with it. I think it's because of the soul journey. In other lifetimes, they've awakened that. So therefore, they come into this lifetime with it already awakened.
Mm. Mm.
But for a lot of people, not really. It's just a matter of practicing. But
And
with being careful, just because they can get themselves into immense trouble. And I have gotten myself in trouble as well in situations like that, that an entity was too strong for me. Because really, this is a work for a shaman. It's not a work if something is really hardcore. So I have gotten myself into situations that they were more powerful than me, and then I was down for a little while, and then managed to get myself out of it because I can also spot it within myself if something
mm,
is there. So
right,
then I can do something about it.
for sure, for sure. And do you like when it comes to psychotherapy, do you incorporate that? Traditionally, if someone was coming for they're struggling with maybe depression, right? So you would maybe help them from a psychotherapy perspective, but then how do you integrate this piece or do you treat it separately?
I try to integrate all pieces, but realistically, I don't take many risks in psychotherapy. Like I know shamans here that I can trust,
Yeah.
and if I feel like there's a spiritual problem, I will point them in that
Mm.
direction. I'm not going to try and do something myself if I know there's someone
Mhm.
competent that can do that. And often I'll teach them tools so that they can at least become more aware
Mm.
themselves. And I've had this situation in therapy where a situation happens that I think, okay, some energy just entered here,
Yes.
and the client can feel it. So then I at least encourage people to be aware, even
Mm.
if they don't know how to fix it, and they go towards someone else to fix it.
And can people address it on their own? I know we were talking about connecting with nature, coming out of your sympathetic system more by doing different practices. Can those things help? Because you're shifting your own energy in a way, and that way the energy is no longer conducive for whatever is being attached to you, perhaps. Can that help you on your own?
Yeah, for sure. Anytime you increase vibration, it helps because some things just drop off. If an
Mm.
entity is very, very dark and it's a lot of entities attached, for example, to people who are smoking or drinking,
Mm.
because they connect with that energy. They were previously smokers or drinkers, and so they just attach. So yeah, once you start raising your vibration, just naturally the entities that are low level stop resonating, and
Mm.
they'll just move on to something else. So yeah, that does
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we were gonna talk about takeaways. I know you've shared so much already. Is there anything else you feel that we haven't touched on that people can be mindful of and start perhaps even thinking about or applying in their lives? It's
I
a
would
broad
really
question.
it is a weird question, but I would really recommend, if this resonates, have a look at the philosophy and psychology of the chakras. I've actually got
Mhm.
a video on my YouTube called Psychology of the Chakras that
Mm.
just goes through each of the chakras and explains what each energy is about. I don't know if we have time for me to just give a very brief overview of the
Sure.
remaining ones, but we do?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
So I've talked about the first and the second. The first one being around grounding and safety. Second one about social connection and sensuality. The third one is about Manipur is about willpower, self confidence, like self esteem, agency, courage, humor, just having the strength and the power to act.
Mhm. Which
And
chakra is that? Just
the third
the
one,
third. Yeah.
Manipura, the what do we call it in English? Navel chakra, I think.
Okay.
If it's not balanced, then we'll feel anger
Mhm.
or selfishness or like lots of ego, like arrogance, etc. Or we'll feel the opposite of that, really disempowered and
Mhm.
hopeless. And that's connected to digestive system, the kidneys. Yeah, it's a lot of things. And then I didn't fully go into the second chakra, the problems with it, but the main problem with the second chakra is frustration. Yeah, I did mention this actually,
Yeah.
frustration,
Yeah, the
social
heart that
anxiety.
was the
Yeah.
heart chakra, right? You were referring to
Uh,
earlier?
I mentioned two of them. The
Yeah.
second one, the sacral, we call it in
Okay.
English, Swadhisthana, and the heart chakra. that I can go into the heart chakra. So the heart chakra is about unconditional love and empathy, acceptance, compassion, altruism, emotional maturity. And if it's not balanced, then we feel sadness and grief and emotional issues and lack of self-love. Yeah. And so this relates to the heart and lungs and blood circulation, like in the body. Then we have the throat chakra, Shuddha, which I mentioned is around ether, the element of ether. So this one is about communication, like the throat, expression, access to the sixth sense, access to common sense. It's about purity as well. And if it's imbalanced, then we will feel like impaired communication. And that's either with others or even with our own self. Lack of communication between body and mind, for example, or heart. Yeah. So that relates to the neck and the ears. And then the third eye, called Ajna chakra, is related to mental capacities like memory, intelligence, discernment, concentration, like understanding complexity kind of thing. And if it's impaired, then all these capacities are impaired as well. Self-awareness, self-reflection, access to the subconscious. There's confusion, rumination, contradictions, etc. Yeah, so this relates to the brain and pineal gland, etc. And then the last one of these big energies is Sashara, which is on the top of our head. And this one is like a portal to the divine, higher consciousness, spirituality, wisdom, freedom from personality and that sort of thing. But if it's closed, like we feel spiritual disconnection, feel like life is shallow, or we have an existential crisis or fear of death, or lack of purpose and perspective. Yeah. And this one relates it's almost outside the body, but it relates also to the brain and the pituitary gland. Yeah, etc. I tried to be really brief, but
Yeah.
that's
No, I
in the
appreciate it.
gist. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you. I think it gives people a flavor of what you're talking about. And then, as you mentioned, if they want more information, they can maybe check it out on your YouTube channel, which perhaps brings us to that point. So, again, I appreciate everything you've shared today. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story and guiding us through the work you do, again, at a very high level, and your own interpretation of it and how you've been able to integrate it. I think the integration piece is really important. It's a word that keeps coming up, and I don't think we fully appreciate it. So I think it was important for you to touch on that too. But for listeners that want to learn more, not only about your work, but your book, what are some ways that they can do that?
Yes, thank you for asking, because I feel like this is so high level what I'm talking about,
Yes.
and I feel the lack of grounding in it. It's like I want to give people like little examples about everything, and that would be my book, like Echoes of the Timeless. It's on Amazon and Kobo, Audible, and everything. That goes through the chakras in a lot of detail, even though it's fiction, it's a story. There's if you're just curious about a 1 hour worth of information, that's the YouTube video, then that's where I
Yes.
want to go. Yeah, and that's it. If people want some daily inspiration, they can find me on social media as author.Catia Batalha, or go to my website, catiabatalha.org.
Great. Yeah, we will put all of that in the show notes. But thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Thank you too for coming. It's been really great to talk to you, and thank you for having me. Yeah, all the best.
Absolutely. You too.